Not just the loss of a perfect mother, but the mother you wished you had and never received. The final stage of healing comes when you discover the inner mother, the nurturing force within you that can give what was once denied. That inner presence is not dependent on her anymore. It grows in the silence of reflection, in the courage to feel, and in the sacred work of rebuilding your sense of worth. When you find that you no longer need to chase or resent the past, you begin to live your life not as a reaction, but as a conscious creation. Healing begins when you stop searching for your mother in others and begin becoming the source of love you always needed. Ask ChatGPT. You said she is both a personal figure and an archetype. Expanded it into 7 paragraphs without bold and italic text, also without headings. ChatGPT said, she is both a personal figure and an archetype, the mother who raised you, whether loving or distant, present or absent, shaped your early experiences in very real and concrete ways. But beyond her individual role, she becomes a symbol embedded deep within your unconscious. She represents origin, creation, safety, nourishment, and also control, fear, and abandonment. Her image becomes larger than life, taking root in the psyche, not just as memory, but as a blueprint, one that influences how you perceive women, authority, love, care, and even yourself. The archetypal mother is everywhere, and unless we become aware of her, we live under her shadow without realizing it. The symbolic mother lives in the collective unconscious. She appears in dreams as a nurturing figure or a devouring one. She rises in our emotional reactions when we feel dependent or helpless, or when we unconsciously expect someone else to save us or heal our pain. The inner image we carry of the mother may be idealized or demonized, but either way, it is rarely accurate. We carry a version of her built from childhood needs and unmet longings, and we place this version onto others, partners, mentors, even spiritual figures, hoping they will meet the needs our actual mother could not. When a person is unaware of this inner construct, they become enslaved to it. They may rebel against their mother, but still live their life according to her rules. They may distance themselves physically, but remain emotionally entangled. They may despise her flaws, but secretly fear becoming like her. This is how the archetype works, not through logic, but through emotional inheritance. Unresolved in childhood, continues to echo through adulthood, shaping decisions, relationships, and identities with invisible threads. Many of us confuse this symbolic mother with reality. We either protect her image and deny our pain, or we blame her for everything and remain stuck. True healing begins when we step back and ask, what part of her lives inside me? What have I internalized that is no longer mine to carry? When we begin this questioning, we start to separate from the archetype and see the real person who raised us. We begin to understand her wounds, her limits, her humanity. And from this understanding, we can release the illusion and begin to reclaim our lives. To do this, we must become conscious of the patterns we repeat. Observe how the mother archetype shows up in our emotional life, our responses to authority, our attachment styles, and our need for validation. The moment we recognize the mother figure appearing in other faces, we reclaim power. We are no longer trapped in the child's role, forever waiting to be rescued or punished. We become capable of caring for ourselves, of giving to ourselves what we once demanded from her. It does not mean rejecting our mother or cutting her off. It means differentiating, understanding where she ends and we begin. Many people spend their lives either overly loyal to or completely estranged from their mothers, never realizing that both extremes are signs of fusion. Psychological independence is found not in distance, but in clarity. When we release the archetype, we are free to see our mothers as they truly are, flawed, complex, and also victims of their own upbringing. In that clarity, we can forgive not always with words, but with presence, with boundaries, and with peace. Ultimately, the symbolic mother we must reconcile with is within. She is the voice that tells us whether we are worthy, lovable, safe, or shameful. Healing begins when we reshape that voice, when we nurture ourselves with the care, discipline, and compassion we once needed from her. When the inner mother becomes whole, the outer world no longer has to carry the burden of our unmet needs. And it is in this inner transformation that true freedom begins. You said, the wound with the mother is often pre-verbal, expanded into 7 paragraphs without bold and italic text, also without headings. ChatGPT said that the mother is often pre-verbal, buried so deep in the unconscious that we may not even be aware it exists. It forms before memory, before language. In the early exchanges of emotion, gaze, and presence, these early moments create emotional imprints that shape our nervous system, our sense of security, and our beliefs about ourselves and others. Because these experiences occur before we are able to think or speak, they live on in the body as sensations, reactions, rather than as conscious thoughts or memories. We may not remember what happened, but we feel its effects in our adult lives every single day. These unspoken wounds show up when we find ourselves afraid of closeness, but terrified of being alone. They appear when we crave affection, yet push it away. When we feel responsible for the emotions of others without realizing it, we may build our lives around protecting ourselves from the same emotional injuries we experienced in infancy or early childhood. We often mistake these defenses as personality traits, when in truth they are emotional survival strategies formed long ago in response to the mother's presence or her absence. It is not uncommon for someone to feel a deep, inexplicable sadness, anxiety, or sense of emptiness that they cannot trace back to any specific event. This confusion only deepens when others minimize their feelings or suggest they have no reason to feel the way they do. The truth is, the pain is real. Origin is hidden. It's like a house built on a crooked foundation. The cracks appear over time, even if we don't remember the moment the ground first shifted. The wound doesn't need to be remembered to be healed. It needs to be recognized. When the maternal relationship is marked by emotional distance, inconsistency, control, a child often internalizes a message that their emotions are too much, their needs are a burden, or that love must be earned through performance. These beliefs don't stay in childhood, they evolve into adult behaviors. Perfectionism, people-pleasing, emotional withdrawal, or intense dependency often trace back to a relationship where the child was not seen, heard, or allowed to exist as they truly were. And without awareness, patterns repeat generation after generation. It is especially difficult when the wound is paired with guilt. Many people struggle with anger toward their mothers, but feel ashamed for having those feelings. They've been taught that to question or criticize their mother is disrespectful or ungrateful. So they silence themselves, convincing themselves that what they feel must be wrong. But healing does not come from denying anger. It comes from making space for it, understanding where it comes from, and letting it coexist with love and compassion. Only when both the pain and the gratitude are allowed to exist together can true healing begin. As adults, we may continue seeking the mother we never truly had through romantic partners, friendships, mentors, or even in spiritual communities. We look for someone to finally give us the safety, affirmation, and unconditional presence we missed. But no one else can fill that role completely. That is the painful truth and also the liberating one. Once we see this, we stop searching for external replacements and begin the real work of reconnecting with the part of ourselves that was left waiting in childhood. We learn how to care for that part with tenderness and patience, becoming the mother we once needed. This healing is not linear. There will be regressions, grief, resistance, and revelations. But with each step, we reclaim parts of ourselves that were lost or hidden. We learn to hold our wounds with kindness rather than shame. We begin to rewrite the emotional code that governs our relationships and sense of self. And in doing so, heal for ourselves. We break the cycle for future generations. The wound may be pre-verbal, but the healing is deeply conscious. It is not easy. It is the path to freedom. You said your adult relationships repeat what you could not resolve with her. Expand it into 7 paragraphs without bold and italic text, also without headings. ChatGPT said your adult relationships repeat what you could not resolve with her. Truth is often hidden beneath layers of behavior we label as coincidence, attraction, or fate. But what draws us to others is rarely random. It is shaped by our earliest emotional experiences, especially those with the mother, the unmet needs, the unresolved wounds, and the emotional hunger from childhood don't simply vanish as we grow. Instead, they influence whom we are drawn to, how we behave in relationships, and what we unconsciously expect others to provide. Without realizing it, we recreate the emotional dynamics we once knew, hoping for a different ending. Many people find themselves stuck in relationship patterns that feel all too familiar. They may fall in love with emotionally unavailable partners overly responsible for others' feelings, or feel suffocated by closeness yet terrified by distance. These patterns are not irrational. They are the psyche's attempt to resolve something left open with the mother. The child within seeks closure, redemption, or repair through the adult self. We try to turn partners into caregivers, hoping they will offer what we never received: unconditional love, safety, or validation. And when they don't, pain resurfaces with intensity. This repetition is not a flaw in your character. It is an invitation to awareness. The psyche repeats what it cannot yet understand. It brings us back to the same emotional roads again and again, not to punish us, but to offer a chance to respond differently. When you begin to notice that your emotional reactions in love or friendship seem disproportionate or familiar, that is a sign. You are not just reacting to the person in front of you, you are reacting to someone behind them, the mother figure your psyche still remembers. In some cases, people feel drawn to relationships where they are needed more than loved. This can stem from a dynamic where the child had to care for the mother emotionally, becoming an adult far too soon. That child grows up believing that love must be earned through sacrifice or self-neglect. In adulthood, they find partners who reflect this same imbalance. Healing begins when they recognize this pattern and allow themselves to receive love without having to perform for it. Only then can they begin to build relationships based on mutual respect and emotional equality. Others may experience deep fear at the thought of intimacy, because they do not desire love, but because closeness once meant danger or emotional chaos. If the mother was unpredictable, intrusive, or emotionally volatile, a child learned that attachment came with risk. As an adult, this translates into withdrawal, mistrust, or self-sabotage when relationships begin to deepen. These responses are protective, but they also isolate. The key is to recognize that these defenses were once necessary but are no longer serving the adult self who longs for connection. There are also those who remain emotionally fused with the mother even in adulthood. They may avoid romantic relationships altogether or unconsciously sabotage them. Part of them still belongs to the mother emotionally. This can happen even when there is physical distance. The inner bond is not broken simply by time or geography. Requires conscious separation and individuation. Healing in this case means honoring the bond, but redefining the boundaries. It means allowing yourself to live a life that is yours, not one shaped entirely by her needs, fears, or unfinished dreams. Until the wound with the mother is brought to light, adult relationships will carry its weight. But when you begin to see the connections, the patterns, and the repeated emotional loops, you gain the power to interrupt them. You begin to make choices rooted not in old wounds, but in present awareness. And from that place, you can build relationships that are no longer echoes of the past, but expressions of your healing. In doing so, the cycle ends with you. You said you may secretly hate her and feel guilty for it. Expand it into 7 paragraphs without bold and italic text, also without headings. ChatGPT said, you may secretly hate her and feel guilty for it. This is one of the most difficult truths to admit, even to ourselves. The mother is supposed to be the symbol of love and safety. Society tells us to honor her, to be grateful, to never question her role. But what happens when those expectations clash with our lived emotional reality? When deep within us there is resentment, disappointment, or even rage, we often silence it, bury it, or turn it inward in the form of shame and self-blame. We feel like we are betraying her by feeling what we feel, and so we betray ourselves instead. This inner conflict can create tremendous psychological tension. On one hand, there may be memories of affection or moments of kindness. On the other hand, there may be wounds caused by neglect, criticism, control, or emotional absence. The psyche struggles to reconcile these two truths, often choosing to suppress the more painful one in order to maintain the image of a good mother. Suppression does not heal. It only drives the wound deeper, where it festers in silence and affects how we relate to ourselves and the world. It's important to understand that feeling anger or resentment toward your mother does not make you ungrateful or unloving. It makes you human. The emotions are not moral judgments, they are signals. When we deny them, we don't become more loving, we become emotionally divided. Part of healing is making space for all of our emotions, even the uncomfortable and socially unacceptable ones. When you give yourself permission to feel honestly, You are not dishonoring your mother, you are honoring your truth, your story, and your emotional integrity. For many, guilt becomes a prison. They believe that acknowledging their pain means rejecting their mother completely, or that it will make them a bad child. But the truth is, love and anger can coexist. Compassion and hurt can live side by side. You can mourn what was missing and still appreciate what was given. Emotional maturity is being able to hold conflicting truths without collapsing into judgment or denial. When we begin to accept this complexity, free ourselves from the black and white thinking that keeps us stuck, the anger we feel is often the result of needs that were never met. A child who felt unseen, invalidated, or dismissed cannot simply outgrow that pain. If those needs were denied or punished, the child learned to hide them. But hiding is not healing. Eventually, the adult self must return to those buried parts and allow them to speak, to say, yes, I was hurt, and yes, I needed more, is not weakness, it is the beginning of wholeness. In doing so, we reclaim the parts of ourselves that were pushed into silence. Understanding that your mother, too, had limitations and wounds of her own can help soften the edges of your anger. But it cannot replace the need to feel it first. Forgiveness, if it ever comes, must rise from a place of truth, not pressure. It cannot be forced by duty or obligation. It must come as a result of deeper self-awareness. When we allow ourselves to feel fully, without guilt, without censorship, can forgiveness become genuine and not a mask to avoid discomfort. Ultimately, healing the relationship with your mother is less about changing her or erasing the past and more about making peace within yourself, about acknowledging the full range of your emotions, grieving what was lost, and learning to care for the parts of you that were once denied. When you can hold your love and your anger with equal honesty, you no longer need to pretend. You can begin to relate to her and to yourself. Authenticity and compassion, that is when real healing begins. You said she too was wounded. Expand it into 7 paragraphs without bold and italic text, also without headings. ChatGPT says she too was wounded. This realization can arrive slowly or all at once. Often through your own suffering, you begin to see that the pain you carried did not start with you. The mother you may have resented, feared, misunderstood was once a child herself. She had needs, dreams, and longings that may have been ignored or crushed. Her capacity to nurture, love, and protect was shaped by the way she was treated. The absence you felt from her might be the very absence she experienced from her own mother. Her harshness may have been her defense, her silence a learned form of survival. This understanding does not erase the pain you felt. It does not excuse behavior that was damaging or neglectful, but it does open the door to something more honest than blame context. Seeing her as a full human being, rather than an ideal or an enemy, allows you to step back from the emotional entanglement and view the generational flow of suffering. You realize that what you thought was personal was often historical. The patterns were passed down, unspoken and unhealed, because no one knew how to break them. There is often sorrow in this revelation. You grieve not only for what you lost, but also for what she never had. You begin to feel compassion not as a forced virtue, as a natural response to witnessing her humanity. Perhaps you see the fear in her, the insecurity, the loneliness. You recognize in her the same longing for safety and love that you feel in yourself. This is the bridge between you. Not perfection, not approval, shared vulnerability. Compassion, however, is not the same as denial. Acknowledging her wounds does not mean you must carry them. Many children, especially emotionally sensitive ones, take on their mother's pain as if it were their own responsibility. They try to fix, soothe, or save her, often at the cost of their own well-being. This is not love, it is emotional entrapment. Healing requires that you let her wounds remain hers. You can hold space for them without absorbing them. You can see her clearly without losing yourself. As you separate emotionally, you may feel guilt or fear. You may worry that you are abandoning her or being ungrateful. But boundaries are not betrayals, they are acts of self-respect. By distinguishing her pain from your own, you give yourself permission to live. You stop waiting for her to change or offer what she could never give. You release the fantasy of the perfect mother and accept the truth of the one you had. And in that truth, you find a strange kind of freedom. This process allows you to turn inward and tend to the parts of yourself that were shaped in her image. You begin to see where her beliefs became yours, Where her fears became your limits, you notice how her voice still echoes in your inner critic or in your hesitation to trust yourself. And with awareness comes choice. You can keep what serves you and let go of what doesn't. You are no longer bound to repeat her life. You can create your own. In this space of clarity and compassion, healing deepens. You are no longer stuck in the roles of victim or caretaker. You become an observer, a learner, and ultimately a transformer. No longer defines your future. It informs it. And your mother, whether still present in your life or not, is less of a haunting force and more of a human figure in your story. You honor her not by carrying her wounds, but by healing your own. And through that healing, the cycle begins to break.